Well, one way or another, I will be able to get this mask off. Just may take a little bit of effort. All righty? Good afternoon. We have a few important updates on COVID, but before we do that, I want to announce that Cami Feek will be our new Employment Security Department Commissioner. Cami has been the interim director since February, and she's been excellent during this transition period, and I appreciate her stepping up to the plate. She's an obvious choice for this position. She's been working hard for 25 years in state government. Her experience is perfect for this position. I want to particularly commend her as a leader for standing up our paid family medical leave policy in the state of Washington. She was hired as our first director of this program, and this was an amazingly successful launch of this program under her leadership. It is the first in the nation and among the most generous in providing benefits to families. It's really a national model, something we're very proud of, and this happened under her leadership. So I believe she has the compassion and the knowledge. She's shown the ability to improve organizations' behavior, and she's got all the prerequisites we need to navigate this department through the difficult challenges that they have, and she's already made substantial progress. She may note a little bit of that during her leadership already. So I'm really grateful to have her in our cabinet, and I'd like to introduce Cami. Could you join us for a few comments?
Absolutely. Thank you, Governor Inslee. I'm honored and humbled to really serve in this role at a time when our agency's services are most needed. I'm grateful for your confidence in me, as well as the bipartisan support I've experienced working with the legislature. Having dedicated my life to public service, I see this as a unique opportunity to lead an amazing team that's committed to making a positive impact and real progress for people and communities across Washington. There's no doubt that it's been a difficult time for all of us, and I go into this role with eyes wide open. ESD is a continuous learning organization, and I'm committed to applying all we've learned in this crisis to increase equitable access to our many services and improving the experience for our customers. I really look forward to taking the investment that you and the legislature made in ESD this past session and accelerating the progress we've made to date. There are significant expectations for us to do our best in this work, and I'm committed to delivering it in a steady and consistent way. Since my temporary appointment, as you noted, we've made progress. And although this isn't an exhaustive list, a few quick examples include successfully stopping an organized imposter fraud attack in early May. We prevented and didn't pay these criminals in their attempts to steal UI benefits. We've also made steady progress in increasing the number of claims issues that we clear each month. This, of course, means results in lower wait times for claimants. We've also redesigned our UI training program to more quickly train and support our new hires. This is really critical because, as you and I have talked, Governor, we're ramping up and we're increasing our staffing levels. I think over the past 14 months, people have grown to know ESD for unemployment insurance. And I don't need to tell you that we faced and continue to face the greatest unemployment crisis since the Great Depression. But ESD is much, much more than unemployment. The agency covers some of the most critical programs to help Washington workers and businesses at the toughest times. This includes reemployment services, the paid family medical leave program you talked about, and soon to be the new long-term care program. In addition to providing historic numbers of unemployment benefits and helping nearly 100,000 people access paid family and medical leave in just the first year of that program, we haven't lost sight of the reemployment work that we need to do, and that's central to our state's recovery. I'm committed to partnering with others in the workforce system on Washington's path to an equitable economic recovery. Navigating this road requires tremendous collaboration between state and local leaders, as well as workers, employers, and community organizations. Collaboration it's really core to my leadership style. It's how I measure true success in the business of public service. And I really look forward to everybody bringing their diverse expertise and visionary thinking to this moment in time. And I am really excited to get to continue fostering this collaboration as we work towards recovery. I'd like to close with where I started, which is gratitude. I want to thank you again, Governor, for giving me this opportunity. I am beyond excited to serve you, ESD, and the people and communities all across our state.
Thanks, Cammie. You noted the legislature, who are important in this, obviously, and we've had really good reviews of your performance the last several months from legislators. We look forward to continuing that relationship with our legislators who cared very deeply about these issues. I do want to compliment you, too, on your ability to ramp up our training program, because we want to ramp up our capacity, our scale of the organization to deal with these claims. And I think you're on a good track in that regard. With that, we would happy to entertain questions for Cammie before we move to the rest of the items here. If anyone has any questions for Cammie, fire away.
First, we'll go to Austin Jenkins with Northwest News Network. Go ahead, Austin.
Thank you, Governor and Commissioner, the newly appointed Commissioner. I do have a question about the paid family leave program. I am hearing that there are tremendous delays with that program in getting the payments out to people, and I'm wondering what's being done to address that. The latest I heard from somebody was that they were told it would take 45 days from the last, the incorrect payment they received to get back payments, and it's been more than 45 days, heard nothing back from the agency, no payments deposited. And this person said that their child will be more than half a year old by the time they potentially get paid here.
Cammie, do you want to address that?
And, we strive to deliver those benefits just as quickly as possible. I think you mentioned the birth of the child, but whether it's family leave or medical leave, we want to make sure that people have the time to care for their families. So I'll follow up on that and see where we are. If that's the case, we'll absolutely do everything we can to get that in the timeframes that we've committed to. But I would say, that program has worked really hard to deliver just as quickly as possible. So I'll follow up on that, Austin. Thank you for the question.
If you can get those people's names to the department, Austin, I know they'll be taking a look at that. I will say, too, if you ask anybody in the United States who's got the best paid family leave, they're going to tell you Washington State for a whole bunch of reasons, and we're very proud of that. But if there's one case we can improve on, we'd certainly like to do it.
Next, we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Go ahead, Jerry.
And Review Committee had held a hearing on the two state audits the ESD audits. At the time, the agency was represented by the Public Affairs Director, and members of the committee of both parties were a little dismayed that yourself or a member of the management didn't show up, and felt they were given a dog and pony show, and they would like to know if anyone's going to be held responsible with what's transpired on the benefit payments. Can you explain why you didn't take part, and do you have intentions to hold anyone responsible based on what you've seen for the last 15 months?
For the question, typically those hearings aren't necessarily a place where the agency head attends. I've made myself available to the legislature and others, as the governor noted. I am not hiding behind anything, and I'm happy to have a conversation about the department's progress. I think, although it's been said over and over again, this particular tool, the UI system nationally, has not served the country well for this particular pandemic and this situation. And we are working really hard to turn that around. We've made some good progress, but there's not a person to point to, a single reason, one simple thing that we can say, this is why we're in the situation we're in. So, I think we're all accountable. I'm accountable to that, and we have a plan to deliver, and that's what we're moving forward on.
Jerry, the fact of this is there's no single person or persons who are responsible for the billions of dollars that dozens of states were victimized by these criminals. This was a systemic problem of an unprecedented pandemic, of an incredibly complex system where people were trying to help people as quickly as they could. And other states suffered billions of dollars of damage. I'm happy we've recovered hundreds of millions of dollars from this. This was a systemic national problem. And I'm glad that we've stopped the fraud now, and Cammie's leadership was successful this spring in stopping this fraud, and I'm appreciative that our ability to do that. So, but she did point out that we need to give consideration to systems that aren't so complex, that can serve our people in these emergency disasters of this economic downturn. And that's something the nation needs to consider, because we really can't solve this alone. We need the federal government to help us in this regard so that we can serve people even better.
Up next, we'll go to Nicole Jennings with Cairo Radio. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you for taking my question, Governor and Commissioner Feek. How many people are currently waiting on their unemployment claims to be adjudicated? And can you tell us when the benefits data dashboard will come back up for us to see this information? It's been down for about 5 months now.
Sure, absolutely. I think the claims number fluctuates daily, and we're on a path to get the dashboard back up in September, sooner if we can. But that will give us a well-rounded, I think, picture of metrics, because I think just one metric around the claims volumes doesn't tell the complete story. So we're working on that, and we'll have it back up soon.
Our last question in this section will go to Essex Porter with Cairo 7. Go ahead, Essex.
I've spoken today with a woman who says that she had to put aside some of her own meals so that she could feed her cats while she waited 17 weeks for unemployment benefits. What will you do to ensure that that never happens again to anybody in our state?
Cammie, you want to talk about some of the improvements you've already made and what you intend to make?
Sure, absolutely. And I would also say, Essex, please, if you hear any of those stories, send them to us immediately. We are doing everything we can in our plan, and the way that we approach this is to serve those that have been the longest waiting. And so those are the people that we are trying to reach the most. And it is a complicated system, but we have a three-part strategy. The first is we are hiring up. We are hiring a bunch of people in both intake and adjudication, which are the key area, bringing hundreds of people on board. And that is really the scaling that we need to do on the resourcing side. We're also looking at how we improve technology. If not today, soon we'll have a contract for a technology that will greatly improve our ability for people to not just chat with us, but also through our phone system, get updates and status on their claims. And then the third part of that is the customer experience, and looking at how we bring in better experiences on the front end. And we've done a lot in that area, but we are talking directly to our customers to find out how to best serve those and to remove barriers that I'm sure are consistent with what the person that you met with and talked with is, Essex. And so the main thing is right now we are super focused on recruiting, retaining, and staffing up a much larger team to really bring that backlog down and serve the people that have been waiting.
Okay, thank you, Cammie. I know you're going to get to work, and you have been for several months.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. Okay, COVID, if we can transition to COVID. This is an amazing moment in our state. It is an amazing moment because we've had considerable success on vaccination, and we are now close to being able to essentially fully reopen our state. We've had substantial reduction in the risk to people who have had this vaccine. We have saved hundreds and thousands of lives, and it is a great joy to know that thousands now have a huge factor to save their lives with this vaccine. And I know there is going to be great joy when we can fully reopen our state, but I don't think we should lose attention to what we're really up to doing here, which is to save lives. We're saving lives, which is our fundamental thing we ought to be joyous about, in my view. And we are saving lives. And I'll give you a statistic that's interesting here. In King County, in April and May, 98% of the people who were in the hospitals had not been vaccinated, 98%. You are 21 times more likely to contract COVID if you've been unvaccinated than if you're vaccinated. This is a miracle product. It is performing miracles, and Washingtonians by the thousands are availing themselves every single day of this incredible life-saving product. So it's really a joy to see the progress we are making, and we're getting really close to our reopening as well. Now, I know people are anxious to hear about the lottery. We have seen a uptick in appointments for vaccinations since the lottery went into effect. Monday saw the largest single-day number of vaccine appointments booked over the last 2 weeks. That's good news. There's been an 8% increase over the daily average. That's good news. So there are some early encouraging signs, but we can't say anything definitive yet about the impact. Obviously, we want to know the people who've won. That was essentially determined yesterday, but now some substantial checks have to be made to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed on this. By the way, if there are any questions about your information, you can go to 1-833-VAX-HELP. This line is set up to get any help. We have very high confidence that people's information, if it was provided to the state, is in this database, and we feel good about that. So that information will be forthcoming. By the way, there are some questions. To date, the people who receive their vaccinations through the Department of Defense or the Veterans Administration are not yet in the state's database because it has not been provided by the federal government. But we will provide incentives on the nature of those for other folks. We will provide an incentive program so that the Department of Defense folks and the veterans are in some incentive program. We are still figuring out the exact dimensions of that. We're still trying to get information from the federal government. It will be easier for us to administer this if they were able to give us that information. But if they are unable or unwilling, we will have probably a standalone program for our folks in the military and our veterans. They're owed that. We're going to make sure that they get that. We're working diligently trying to get that to be stood up as soon as humanly possible. We also, just now an update on where we are on reopening. We are in our aggregate numbers are now adding the aggregate number of doses that the Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration have told us has been administered to residents of our state. And that's good news because that's about 152,000 people that we can add to our total. We're putting those into our aggregate numbers now. Now, so the good news is when we've added that in and we look at our current state data, we have shown that 66.4%, an initial vaccination rate for Washingtonians of those who are eligible who are 16 and up. And as you know, we picked 16 and up because that's the folks who were eligible when we started this metric. This is more than 4 million people. Pretty exciting to know 4 million people have additional protection in our state. And we're making great progress, as I've said, continuing on that upward climb. So we're encouraged by the progress we've made to be able to hit our 70% goal. We'd love to do that before June 30th. We don't know if that's possible or not, but if we do hit those numbers, we're going to reopen our state essentially immediately. So if you're thinking about this, there's a lot of good reasons to get this vaccine right now. You can help us reopen up earlier, and you'll be part of this pool, and that pool's not going to last forever. Don't let those folks get in line ahead of you to potentially win this lottery. You got a place in line. Make sure you take it now in the next couple of weeks. So either way, we will be reopening our state quite soon, one way or another. And I want to encourage people to get vaccinated to help us in that degree. Also, some good news. Seattle has fully vaccinated 70% of residents 12 years in age and older. Seattle is now the most vaccinated large city in the United States. Congratulations to Seattle. We want everybody to get to that level, and we'll save a lot of lives in the state of Washington. Congratulations to Mayor Durkin for her leadership and many other leaders in Seattle who've done everything they can to make this accessible throughout their city. They've been very creative getting to folks who might not normally have good access to health care. Today, we hope to answer any questions about the COVID mitigation efforts as well. We've been working on COVID mitigation guidance for when we lift our restrictions. And here's the scoop. Industries may return to usual operations by June 30th or earlier if we hit this 70%. With one caveat, current applicable mask guidance will still be required. There will also be some continuing capacity restrictions for very large indoor event venues. And there will be certain COVID mitigation measures going on in schools and universities with their own decisions. This is the way this will work. Large indoor venues that can accommodate 10,000 people or more will be limited to 75% capacity after we lift most of these COVID restrictions. We will not require physical distancing, but attendees will have to follow the masking guidance. Obviously, this is a basic principle of public health to try to prevent large COVID events. We don't want to see large events spreading this disease, and we still have risks because these variants are still out there. And as you know, one variant is increasing in our state that we have to be aware of. So this is an ongoing protection that we will continue. However, if all of the attendees are fully vaccinated, other smaller venues can fill to full capacity right now. We also expect the current masking guidance to remain in effect, as well as our travel guidance that largely mirror CDC recommendations. Lastly, I'd like to reflect on some of the progress we've made. This is an incredible time. Vaccinations are now widely available. They are free. More than 2/3 of our people in our state have initiated their vaccinations. And the public's confidence in this miracle has grown every day. And the reason that confidence has grown is because of the facts that people are observing. It's understandable that some people who've wanted to hold back for a while to see how this is unfolded. But what they have seen is unbridled success. Hundreds of millions of people have now have this vaccine with essentially little or no untoward effect. 98% of the people who are in our hospitals today are people who have not been vaccinated. This has been shown to be free. And so those facts, as they have enrolled, are now increasing the people who want to get vaccinated. It's a good thing. And that hesitancy now is being reduced. Soon we'll be able to get back to essentially normal operations. We should be very proud of what we've accomplished in the state of Washington. We've saved thousands of lives, and now we're on the verge, on the cusp, on the doorstep of getting back to full operations. It's a good day in the state of Washington. With that, we'll stand for questions. We have Lacey Fehrenbach here today and also Nick Struley to stand for questions if anyone has pertinent questions. You may fire when ready, Gridley.
First, we'll go to Drew Mickelson with King 5. Go ahead, Drew.
Good afternoon, Governor. You said you think there's been an uptick thanks to the lottery, but some 2 million people still remain unvaccinated. Is the lottery and the use of those funds the best way to get at those folks? And is there another incentive plan being worked on by your office and health officials?
It's certainly a good way. This has shown to be effective in other states where there's been fairly significant provable uptake. It's too early really to say now. I've indicated there's some promising news in the last 48 hours that I told you about of having higher numbers the last couple days and higher new appointments coming in. So there's some early good news. But look, this is not the only game in town. We have a very extensive public campaign to share scientific information with the public. By the way, I almost forgot this. Something else we ought to be proud of. The public information campaign to share this information just won an Emmy for the folks who produced it in the state of Washington. And it's kind of nice to know we've led the nation in so many ways, including a way to share information in something like 54 languages for people in a scientifically credible way that is giving people increasing confidence. That's very important. So there's a lot of things that are important, not just this lottery. As far as the incentives, the incentive program will continue with hundreds of prizes, as you know, in multiple ways, including with private enterprise. And we'll continue to look for ways to make this easier for people to make this decision and fundamentally share the good news for them about the science behind this, about how effective this. Look, when you've had hundreds of millions of people get this vaccine, maybe there was a reason to hang back, but at this point, there's no need to. You've had hundreds of millions of people whose lives are being saved with no untoward, significant problems of any long-term nature. It's time for everybody to get vaccinated.
Up next, we'll go to Jessamine McIntyre with Q13. Go ahead, Jessamine.
Thank you very much for taking my question. According to the CDC, there are millions of doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that are in danger of expiring. For instance, in Ohio, there's over 200,000 that are set to expire on June 23rd. Is that a problem for the state of Washington? How much Johnson & Johnson is currently in the state, and how much is set to expire at a soon date?
Lacey, do you want to talk about that? I have something to add, but why don't you take it right now?
Good movement of our on-hand supply of vaccines into arms. We have one of the highest utilization rates or lowest percent of doses sitting on shelves, however you look at it in Washington state. So I'll get those numbers in an email to Tara and Mike so they can follow up with you. Thanks.
There is also an ongoing federal effort to see if that expiration date really is something necessary with the science we now have. So we may have some further guidance from the federal government about its usage in this regard. But I know DOH will do everything possible to see that those are used when they can. Again, this comes back to Washingtonians making individual decisions, though. We need people to step up to the plate. Government can't do this alone. These are individuals. And so we hope people will take this step.
Okay, up next, we'll go to Keith Eldridge with Como 4. Go ahead, Keith.
Governor, this has to do with the economy. You're talking about reopening the state fully on June 30th or prior to that. Dr. Steve Lurch this morning said that the economy is already making a big rebound. What's your take on the fact that the state's already in good shape?
Well, it's good news. Look, our economy fundamentally is very, very strong. I know this is a big challenge. People are still moving to Washington State like crazy. It's still a robust real estate environment. In fact, we know about real estate prices have been difficult or good depending which side of the glass you're on. And the reason is because we have such a diverse economy. We don't just fire on one cylinder. We got multiple cylinders that are doing well. Life sciences is very robust. Obviously, online retail, software. We just have multiple legs of the stool that almost all of which that are doing really, really well in our state. And again, this is because we have a state that embraces values that are consistent with economic growth. We respect and treasure diversity, so we bring talent from all over the country and the world to build our economy. We believe in the importance of a clean, healthy environment so that people like to live here. Boy, if you're recruiting a software engineer, they want to come here because it's such a clean, wonderful place to live relative to other areas, and we treasure that environment. We provide greater equity in healthcare, so we've got some of the most active healthcare with the public option coming in, new advances in child care, minimum wage increases. We take care of working families. So those policies have helped build our economy as well. And I'm just pleased as punch that what you heard from Steve, that coming out of this difficult time, it looks like we're going to be on the rebound big time. But look, getting this vaccine is important to continue this economic rebound, though. We do not want to go backwards. And these varieties are still dangerous. In Britain, this Delta variety is now about 50%. It could be significantly more transmittable and maybe more dangerous. We don't want to have to face that. We want to knock this down. I look at this like You know, we've kind of got 98 yards. We're on the 2-yard line. We got to get this thing across the goal line. We do not want to see this get out of the box. We want to restrain this virus. And every time somebody gets a vaccine, we strike another blow against this dread disease. And we ought to keep hitting it.
Up next, we'll go to Nicole Jennings with Power Radio. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hello, how will you stop the state's lottery system from falling prey to scammers in the same way that we saw the scammers get through to the unemployment system last year? There's a lot of personal information there in the lottery system. So I think people are concerned that that personal information is being kept completely private. And then can you say anything on the legality of sharing this healthcare information, personal healthcare data with the state lottery system?
I don't think there's any privacy issues here. There's nothing that has been generated in this system that is not already in the state's database. So there's no additional privacy intrusions. As far as fraud, that is one of the things going on right now, is that people who have been selected are being notified, and they're being checked to make sure they are who they say they are, and make sure they got the vaccine when they said they got it. And we will have a way to check on those winners, and that's what's going on right now. I don't believe there's a significant risk of that. There's no comparison in this situation.
Just wanted to remind people that the Department of Health is assigning randomly generated numbers to people that are vaccinated and held in our information system. And then we give those random numbers to lottery, and that's how the drawing happens. So by getting vaccinated in Washington State, you become eligible. We're not sending over to lottery all of your information. We're only sending lottery those random numbers. And then when numbers are drawn, we at DOH match them to the person who is the winner. And so that is to protect against both fraud and to protect your health information.
Thanks, Lacey.
Just wanted to add one last little bit, building on Lacey's remarks, that when a cash prize winner is selected, and this is standard lottery practice, that once a cash prize winner is selected, they actually show up in person at a lottery office in their local area to fill out a bunch of the paperwork, verify that they're a Washington State resident, and go through other additional fraud checks. So the system really has wraparound protections that are really all built into the lottery system from the very beginning.
And if we'd followed the same things during the pandemic, nobody would have got their unemployment checks for 4 years. That's the difference. We couldn't do those things. We needed to help people, and we did.
Next, we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Hill. Go ahead, Jerry.
Was asked earlier about the doses. I see on the dashboard there's states administering under 30,000 doses a day on average, and it was over 50,000 a couple weeks ago. So I'm wondering, how many doses is the state receiving each week from the federal government? And it sounds like there's no waste, but I wonder if you could account for the difference and where all these extra doses ending up right now.
Well, we don't have an overage because we adjust our orders to the federal government to what we think we can actually provide. So there hasn't been a wastage or things sitting in a warehouse that aren't being used, and it's been pretty well calibrated. So that has not been a problem. Now, we would like to obviously increase our vaccination rates and people who sign up now, because we've got access to additional doses that are not being ordered from the federal government. They simply are not coming to Washington State. We think that's a shame. We'd like to order everything we can get our hands on if we can get people to come in for the vaccination. Do you have anything to add, Lacey?
The governor summarized this well. Both the state and the federal government have moved to a demand-based ordering system, and our providers in Washington State are doing an excellent job of ordering what they can administer and what their patients are asking for in terms of vaccines. I want to assure the public that there is capacity and supply to meet and by far exceed the 70% goal and continue vaccinating Washingtonians. So please, we are on the demand side of the equation, not the supply or logistics side of getting people vaccinated.
We've got time for 2 more questions. Up next, we'll go to Austin Jenkins with Northwest News Network. Go ahead, Austin.
Thanks so much, Governor. Just can you explain the kind of methodology and motivation behind waiting to get to 70% before allowing for a pre-June 30th opening versus being willing to open on June 30th no matter what, even if we're not at 70%? And I ask this in the light of the fact that there are many saying, just open things up now.
Well, we are going to open up on June 30th, even if we are not at the 70%. So I'm sorry if that word didn't get to you, but we've tried to make this abundantly clear. We will open up on June 30th or before that if we hit 70% before that. We think these are reasonable decisions. They're reasonable for 10,000 different reasons where we have evaluated the risk that we now have, the rate of vaccination, the presence of variants. Every week or every day we look at the statistics and metrics on this subject, and what we see is that the vaccination rate appears to be restraining the virus so that we continue to have declining numbers of infections that are occurring on a daily basis. That's very pleasing. That has now continued for a few weeks. We also have continuing declining in hospitalization. That is extremely pleasing. Same situation. And so those trends, we believe, give us confidence that we can reopen, reduce our non-pharmaceutical interventions. So it's a collection of all that data and our best assessment of the status of the virus. But we thought if we reach 70% earlier than that, it makes sense to move forward earlier, and that's the rationale behind our decision.
Okay, we've got time for one last question. We'll go to Christine Thayer, Pink 5. Go ahead, Christine.
Hi, Governor. Going a little bit more on the city of Seattle reaching that very impressive 70% threshold of vaccinated, do you have any thoughts or guidance for other counties throughout the state to catch up to that very impressive milestone of more than 70%?
Well, Seattle has done some good things. They have, Mayor Durkan has made sure that they send mobile clinics out to underrepresented communities that don't historically have adequate health care. They've been very attuned to provide language services to people that make sure language is not a barrier. So they've done some really aggressive and effective things like that. But so have other communities well. Pierce County's done some wonderful things, sending out mobile clinics to churches and community centers. They've done those same things as well. Look, this is, at some point, citizens are making the call here. Are they going to get vaccinated or not? And there's been more people in King County who have made that individual decision. We hope that people will follow in that direction, and they are. They are increasing throughout the state, the numbers of people being vaccinated. So I don't think, you can say that if you'd done exactly the same thing in King County, you'd have the same numbers in other counties. It just hasn't worked that way. But we are being very intentional, increasing access. The state has a care van situation now. We have vans that will go out to community centers. I think there's been like 28 requests for those already. We're having, as I've said, a very active public relations campaign, won an Emmy for it last weekend. So those things are continuing, and I think this incentive program has a possibility of helping as well. So we look at this as a good news story today of we're heading upward, and that's the direction Washington always wants to go. No, thank you. Thank everybody for being a leader here too. I do want to emphasize leadership counts here, not just from governors or presidents. Everybody's a leader here. Anybody who's a cousin or an uncle or a nephew or a father or a grandfather or grandmother, we can all be leaders here. And I hope you can be a leader for the people you love. Talk to them about this. Ask them to call their physician. Ask their physician a couple questions about it if you do have hesitancy. If you'll ask your son or if you'll ask your grandparent, hey, could you think about getting the vaccine? we're going to skin this cat. And we're doing a good job on this, but I just encourage everybody to be a leader here. Nothing better than saving lives, particularly if they're Washingtonians. Let's go get them. Thanks a lot.